Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 6th edition of Washington Arbitration Week. Well, let me introduce myself. My name is Ian Laird. I'm one of the co-chairs and founders of Arbitration Week, along with my colleague, Dr. Jose Antonio Rivas. It's a real pleasure to be here in our 6th year. We started out in 2020 in the midst of COVID, and we like to think we provided a little bit of a virtual lifeboat to our colleagues here in Washington. But one of the things that we've always focused on is going beyond Washington to look to the arbitration as part of the practice of arbitration in Washington. And from the very beginning, we've had attendees virtually from all over the world. We've had folks not only from Washington participating as moderators and panelists, but folks as well from the broader international arbitration community. And the one thing I have to say over the last 5 years is that the incredible enthusiasm and support of the Washington arbitration community has been amazing. And it's grown from year to year. The enthusiasm of the law firms, of the service providers, of the institutions, all of our supporters has been amazing. And in fact, there are too many to call out, so I'll hold back from calling out any specific firms. But I do want to mention the incredible support of the X-Strategy firm, which has taken on the heavy oar of organizing the conference. And just to give you a sense of how we like to think we're a little different here in Washington, this is a completely free of charge, open registration conference. We've organized it so that it can be basically paid for through our sponsorships and the supports of those who put on, for example, today's panel here at Hughes, Hubbard, and Reed. It's really very much a community effort, and it's something that has actually been truly an amazing kind of growth and community feeling. I do want to mention a couple of names, and you've seen probably their names on various emails. Maria Matamala and Momin Mosin are two of the organizers who've been with us in every step. They've helped to organize 25 panels this year. We have 5 receptions and 2 workshops. And I have to say, our advisory committee, which helped put together this year's set of programs, really outdid itself. We have an amazing editorial committee that supports us. We have a number of meetings over the years to put together the program. Just a shout out to them and their amazing efforts. I do want to finally just thank my colleague, Dr. Rivas. He's put an enormous amount of energy into this conference, and I think he's really a true example of what I call a Washingtonian arbitration practitioner. He's not only a counsel and an arbitrator, he's a graduate from Georgetown. He's come here from Columbia and settled in and become a true member of the community. And I think he's a great example of for many of us of how to build your career and your life in this great community of Washington in the international field. So let's get to today's panel. The first panel today is on a topic that we really wanted to address this year. It's something that a number of folks have communicated to us that would be a great topic, and this is on mentorship in international arbitration. And specifically, we're looking at the DC legal community. And the title of the panel is How to Organically Promote an Environment of Mentorship with question mark. Our moderator, I think, is perfectly suited for this panel. Jessica Killeen is a law clerk here at the U.S. District Court of Maryland, the District of Maryland, so the District Court for the District of Maryland. Prior to her clerkship, Jessica was an attorney advisor at the U.S. Department of Labor. As well, she's a graduate of George Washington Law School and holds a certificate in international commercial arbitration, the Washington College of Law. Sorry, that's, yes, George Washington University Law School, as well as a certificate at American University's Washington College of Law. Lots of Washingtons there, all in Washington too. Jessica serves notably as co-chair of the Women's Bar Association of DC, of the District of Columbia, of their Young Lawyers Committee and their International Law Forum. And she's looking forward to working for one of your law firms after her clerkship, and no advertisement there. Finally, before I hand over the mic to Jessica, I want to thank Hughes, Hubbard, and Reed for the hosting today and their fantastic hospitality. In particular, Gaela Garing-Flores and Kelby Elena have been incredible supporters almost from the beginning of Washington Arbitration Week, and we thank them for kicking us off in such a great fashion. And finally, thanks to the Women's Bar Association of the District of Columbia. I think this is a great combination relationship, and we'd like to continue to grow that in the future. So thank you, Jessica. And so away we go.
Thank you so much, Ian. Really appreciate the introduction and the little bit of advertisement. So thank you all for being here, and thanks to Hughes Hubbard for hosting. We're excited to be kicking off Washington Arbitration Week this morning. And thank you for being here at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. We appreciate it. So I'll go ahead and introduce our panel of experts this morning. We have from my left, Eleanor Erney is counsel at Hughes Hubbard and Reed in Washington, D.C., where she's practiced both international, commercial, and investor state arbitration for almost 10 years. She represents both state entities and commercial parties in arbitrations in the energy, mining, aviation, and construction sectors, among others. She's also an adjunct assistant professor at American University's Washington College of Law, where she teaches international commercial arbitration and coaches the school's Willem C. Viz International Commercial Arbitration Moot Court team. You're going to hear me say international commercial arbitration quite a bit. Next, we have Meg Kinnear. Meg is a leading expert in investor state and commercial disputes with more than 40 years of experience in high-stakes international arbitration and litigation. She led Canada's Trade Law Bureau from 1999 to 2009 and served as Secretary General of ICSID from 2009 to 2024, where she oversaw ICSID's significant increases in membership, caseload, and diversity in arbitration. In July 2024, Meg co-founded Lowe and Kinnear Dispute Resolution with Lucinda Lowe, where she focuses on international adjudication before ad hoc and institutional bodies. Next, we have Michael Nolan. He's an independent arbitrator based in New York and Washington, D.C., where he specializes in international disputes involving commercial contracts, concession agreements, and investment protection treaties. Before becoming a full-time arbitrator and member of arbitration chambers, Michael was a partner at Milbank LLP for nearly 25 years, where he served as lead counsel for significant matters in U.S. state and federal courts and led major arbitrations and litigations across 5 continents. Michael also serves as an adjunct professor teaching international commercial arbitration at Georgetown University Law Center. And we have Cansu Aydin. Cansu is a partner at Appleton Luff, where her practice focuses on international trade and investment law, investment protection, and commercial law. She advises governments and corporate clients on trade policy, foreign investment, regulatory compliance, free trade agreements, customs union alignment, and trade-in services. Prior to joining Appleton Luff, she served in the Turkish government for nearly a decade and also practiced commercial law in Istanbul. Thank you all so much for being here. So today, as Ian mentioned, we're going to be talking about mentorship in international arbitration, specifically in the DC area, and the unique aspects that each of those pieces of that puzzle kind of have. So I'm going to ask all of our panelists, first of all, how has mentorship influenced your career path? And can you think of a specific example of a mentor you found organically? pass it to Eleanor.
Thank you. And good morning, everyone. So yeah, I started my career actually as an economist and fell in love with the law, in part because I was seeing so many economic systems fall apart and asking myself, why does this keep happening? And so speaking with the professor I was working with, I was at the University of Bologna working as a researcher and an economist. And speaking with the professor, she said, well, why don't you go investigate that? Go to law school, see if you can figure this out, fix these contracts. So I think that is perhaps a career goal of mine. We'll see if I ever get there. But in going into the law, I think my first major mentor in the arbitration space was the summer after my 1L year at Georgetown. I was working in-house at a company, again in Italy. Unsurprisingly, all the law firms I interviewed with reminded me they did not have an office in Rome. But speaking with him, I was sort of in this moment of thinking, I love economics, I love global transactions, I want to do something cross-border, but I had no idea if I wanted to go into transactional work or litigation or what that career path could really look like. And he took me aside and said very seriously, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, you are in fact a litigator. So got me into the thought of arbitration and the thought of litigating these disputes. And I think basically ever since then, I've had a lot of mentors that have opened many doors. I think from partners I work with here who, handed me cross-examinations in arbitration hearings and said, why don't you take this witness and see how it goes? And then, what do you mean you only have one witness here, 7 more? Keep going. To people who have given me oral argument opportunities, to panels and other things. I think mentors have been a really huge part of my career. But to the organic mentoring question, interestingly, my very first professional mentor is actually a poet. She is a person that I met when I moved to Italy the first time because I didn't know anyone and I was reaching out to expat communities. And she offered me a place to stay in her apartment because I didn't have anywhere to live just yet. And she is the person who I think reminded me the most that the biggest thing I needed to do was just say yes to opportunities. DC is how she said it. That's the Italian for say yes. And so, reminding me that even if I didn't feel ready, if someone was opening a door, it probably meant that they thought that I could take on that opportunity. I think that's been a really huge part of shaping where I've gotten.
Well, I've had a number of informal mentors and they've all been very important. I think they've been important for 2 things in particular. Number one is teaching a specific skill. And I can think of, for example, a lawyer I worked with on a very big case in Canada, and I had to cross-examine an expert, and it was really important. And I think I was kind of flailing. And he actually sat me down for about a full day, and we role-played the cross-examination. And to this day, I can tell you it's the best cross I've ever done in my life. So it really mattered to me, but it was that one little thing that really helped. The other way that I think mentors have been helpful is almost as a sounding board, getting to know the organization that you're in, getting to know the work that's around. So those are the sort of kind of the way it's developed organically for me. And, often it's just you get to know somebody because you work with them on a file and you hit it off and then you continue the relationship. Or in an office, it's sort of 4:30 and you're kind of wondering, can I do another couple of hours? And you walk around and you say hi to someone and a conversation starts. Those, I think, are just the best ways to get mentoring relationships.
I think that it's an interesting answer because thinking about this question, it seems to me that mentorship, depending how you look at it, has been so important to my career because I didn't really start out very focused on international arbitration. I just wanted to try cases in sort of a general commercial practice. And it's really about winning, persuading, something like that. And it's the sort of thing that you really, I think, and we all have a sense of this, you don't really get it out of a book. You get it from people, how people do different things. And so when I think about it, I think about mentorship a little bit broadly. It's really been all about mentorship and seeing how people do things and why they do things and how what they do relates to who they are and how you can incorporate them. And I was thinking a little bit on the fly. Do I have like a good organic mentorship story? And I don't have like anybody like who like invited me to live with them and then gave me like. But I was thinking I do have this story, and this is one I hadn't thought about in a while. But I used to think about this. I had a summer associateship at a firm. Then I went back to that firm, and the firm was a little unusual in that they didn't have a rotation system. It would then be assigned to one person. And I think it was a year and a half or something like that. Then you were on that person's team. So that was it. And the person who I was assigned to, I had a little contact with in the summer associate job, but, you know, it was just a little assignment, associates around. Came back, and it wasn't the very first time I encountered this guy because he was beginning a deposition program. So I was in kind of the back of the room, and he took depositions for several days and was like all exciting, you know. And then I was feeling pretty good about life and the job and everything. Gave me some assignment to write some letter. I wrote the letter. I walked in. He read the letter, took the letter, rolled it up. That almost sounds like something out of a little bit of a, you know, a stereotype or script, but he did it. He didn't say anything to me. I revised the letter. I come back. He looks at it, balls it up at second class. This is really bad. Throws it in there twice. Now I knew the guy. You know, we'd had interaction. I come back this third time. He marks it up. It's all paper. Changes, hands it to me. Doesn't really see. He was really kind of a jerk, this guy. And for the course of the next year, he continued to be. But he was trying to communicate something to me. He was trying, he was kind of this bulldog litigator, and he was trying to kind of put me in a state of mind and a toughness. And I can't say as we're like great friends today, okay? But he taught me a lot, you know, and because I was open to what he had to teach. Was he like a mentor? I mean, in a sense, he was. I mean, is he a close friend? But he was quite available in doing those things. So that's one very organic, because I was assigned to him. And that went on for a year, various versions of that all the time.
I don't have many stories that can go beyond those, but well, I was serving in the government, and then I got a scholarship, went to Georgetown, and all I was, you know, thinking, why did I come here, right? I want to, you know, have my master's degree. That I have to go back and serve the amount that is doubled the amount that I spent at Georgetown. So it was never like I was contemplating any careers in DC or internationally. But I came across to a very special person. I think that we can call names. Gary Horlick. He's very well known in international trade law area. And he was like, you know, the basic things about free trade agreements and customs union, trade law. Why don't you, you know, come and have a coffee with me first, and then we can, you know, exchange ideas. And that was the start when I began thinking there might be something else. It's something else entirely different from the work at the government. And that led me to join my current law firm. It wasn't that direct. It maybe 5 years passed after Georgetown. But his voice was always in my head, telling the things that probably I should have been telling myself. I just didn't know it. I think this is what mentorship is. You connect with someone, and that person just wakes up something, and then you tell yourself that there is a second person living and probably was willing to give you a chance, right? And you don't have to you don't have to be too convincing. You don't have to try so much. He sees something and you just go and figure out what he sees in you. And I was thinking, this is a great man. He has lots of publications. And this is how my career had shifted. And then now going back and in retrospect, I can safely say that every phase of my career, someone influenced me. And we were maybe 20 years ago, we didn't call them mentors because this is right now is more institutionalized. But they were, in a sense, sometimes in a friendly manner, but sometimes in a more aggressively changing manner. They just change you. This is how my career path was influenced by a mentor. So thanks, Gary, so much. I hope that he's listening. I hope he's well.
So I'm going to direct this question to Meg and Eleanor. Meg and Michael, what are the benefits and drawbacks of sort of formal mentorship programs versus organic mentorship programs?
I have actually never been involved in a formal mentorship program, so I don't know that I can say too much, but my sense is that it's very different and obviously has different advantages than the informal mentorship. Formal mentorship obviously is structured. I think it's very useful, but you have to commit in a different way. You have to commit to, it's almost like committing to a class. We're going to meet this time, we're going to deal with this topic, being very sort of structured in that sense. Whereas an informal mentorship obviously is quite the opposite. In terms of formal mentorships, though, I think of, for example, the ICA mentorship, which is, again, quite formal. They have some very senior mentors. They'll all have about 6 to 8 people. And everyone I know who's gone through it has just raved about it, said it's been life-changing for their career. So obviously, I think it's a great thing. The informal membership, obviously, I think it has different advantages. And the main one that I think of is it's almost more, it's spontaneous and it deals with what you're dealing with right now. You walk into someone's office, I have this cross-examination and I really don't know how I get around this point. What do you think? Okay, let's talk about it. Or I'd really like to work on this file. How do you think I could get on this file or something like that? So it's sort of more immediate, more targeted, but still a very useful kind of thing.
Yeah, I hedge a little bit too about the formal mentorship because I think, I've been assigned as a formal mentor, but when I was more on the mentee side, it wasn't as much formal mentorship. So I'm speaking that a little bit at a distance, but it's interesting to me that as we were preparing for this, my son, who's a second-year associate at a law firm, we were discussing something going on in his life, and I was like trying hard not to give advice, but still giving advice, as you do. And he wasn't entirely convinced because he's on the ball. And he interjected in the discussion, it was just as we were preparing for this, that he was going to have coffee with his associate mentor, because he has an associate mentor and a partner mentor who are formally kind of assigned. And subsequently, not because I was preparing for this, but because I was talking to him, he told me who it was kind of institutionally that his associate mentor had suggested over coffee. He talked to and how it made sense to him, and I heard like it made sense to me. You told me to do that. So I think it's very valuable. I think it's valuable. I think as we have more institutionalized institutions, more organized places, I think it is helpful to give people a point of contact that they kind of feel they can draw upon. And I'd encourage people to utilize that and to not be of the expectation that that will be more than it is, or that it has to be only what it is either, because I do think that these things develop organically. And if you're given some connection to someone that has a reason and a purpose and are kind of respectful of that, I think there's probably a pretty good likelihood, at least sometime, that it becomes something more than that.
Yeah, so switching gears just a little bit, I want to talk about, we've talked about how a mentorship relationship has influenced your careers and the benefits and drawbacks. The next question I have is, what should a mentee realistically expect from their mentor? What is a reasonable sort of expectation on both sides from a mentor and a mentee? And do you think a mentor has any responsibility towards their mentee and vice versa? And I'll sort of direct this to all of you.
Sure, I can start. I think the first thing I'd say is that a mentor's time is a gift, not a given. And so being respectful in your approach and being prepared with what you want to talk to a mentor about is really, really important, especially when you're dealing with sort of like the boss mentors, the career mentors, the people that are opening all the doors and helping you sort of direct your career through what you want it to go to. But I think that another thing is vulnerability. And that one's actually really difficult. And in that, I'd say like, it's important to emphasize this is a mentorship relationship. This is not just a professional transaction. This is often someone that you're going back to a lot, that you're speaking with constantly, that you are really letting get to know you. And I think, you know, to my story earlier, my first boss would have never been able to say you're a litigator if he had not known who I was as a person. And so having a relationship that is an ongoing thing, that are ongoing conversations, I think that's really, really important. And I think that allows a mentor to share not only the successes, but also the not so successes. And that can be some of the best advice that you get as a mentee is, when did it go wrong and why? And how do I prevent that happening for me? If it's a question about a case that you're working on, if it's a strategy that you're trying to adopt, if it's a cross-examination gimmick and you want to see how it's going to work. I think learning from a mentor ways that they have tried that it may not have gone as well as it perhaps should have. That's a really important thing. And that only comes when you really put in the time with your mentor to get to know each other. I think that it flows both ways.
I agree. I think the big one is time. And I think every mentor will mention that. You cannot have the expectation that, you know, we're going to meet every Monday at 10 to 11 and et cetera, et cetera. You're usually dealing with busy people and their schedules are often hard to predict. So I think it's about being flexible and about having specific things you want to talk about. I think that makes the mentor relationship work better. So I totally agree with that. And I've heard many mentors say that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, I have never been a part of any formal mentorship program, but from the organic relationships that I have built, I can safely say that the expectation of the mentor is usually respect and curiosity. So I think what mentor expects from that relationship is that they are investing in the time and progress of the mentee, right? And that's an investment. But also in return, it should be reciprocated with a level of respect for the time, as Meg said, but also for from the mentee's perspective. I think it's very important to think that if there is a mentorship relationship that is there, then the mentee should have a profound trust in the mentor's way of leading or supporting or showing ways of, you know, access to information, to more experience. And I think this is the kind of relationship each other expects from each other, right?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a nice comment when you say when there's a relationship with a mentor, you should have kind of a profound trust that the mentor is a little bit going to be able to guide how it is that you're interacting, and that's part of what can be there. And I think that's a really good comment, and I think that's really very helpful. I say one thing, and I don't have any kind of an answer to this, but we're so much more focused on networking just in general than we used to be in life. And I get lots of reach outs from people, which are generally a good thing. And I've generally not just mentor type people or younger people, but if, you know, nutty people say they have a case to bring, I usually have them into the office and talk to them. You know, that's kind of how, you know, an approach. That becomes more challenging when there's lots more contact that's kind of less, in a certain sense, organic, in you're having interaction with people. And those people themselves, precisely because they're not in a relationship with you, maybe can't let you guide how that goes. So I'm not going to say much more about it, but I think it's tricky because younger people are trying to establish relationships and create mentorships. And it can be difficult in a lack of a kind of organic structure that we're more familiar with from, say, working together in an office. And there is a lot more of that now than, you know, there used to be some number of years ago.
So does mentorship take different forms at different stages in your career or in different environments? Michael, I know you went from being a partner at a firm for many years to now being a professor. Has that sort of influenced the mentorship relationship and how the expectations adjust?
Well, I mean, I was just a partner at a firm and then I taught a course at a school. So it's not really going from one thing to the other. in that sense, just never been like a real professor, just taught like a course. So I can't really offer a lot from that perspective, but I will say that the relationships always change. I mean, everybody's relationship is always changing, no matter what it is. And, you know, I think on one of our preparation calls, I spoke about a fellow who was really just a few years older than I was, but he seemed like he was infinitely older, you know, because when you're young at a law firm, he might have been like a 6th year. I was like a 1st year. He seemed like, you know, an ancient person, you know, and we had this relationship where he was like navigating stuff and telling me everything. And I was very happy to hear it. And, you know, over time we became, I won't say really like close, intimate friends, but we became, you know, people saw one another often and interacted. And we always really had that dimension of it, that he had really been, you know, in charge and the senior person. It added something nice to the relationship. But that really seeded, you know, into the background as you converge, as you get older. And it's a nice aspect. So I just suggest that they do change in ways that like all relationships change. But I, for one, always kind of value and still value the fact that we have that like beginning, you know, in that relationship, you know, in those experiences. And it's nice to have that, even if you're really not in a kind of mentor-mentee relationship any longer.
I think it should evolve into something, right? It should start maybe on a more formal basis, but I often see that it evolves into a different kind of friendship, one that is absolutely not judging, and maybe in a less setting, in a more casual way. You have a more maybe frequent interactions. And then, of course, other things are involved. You start asking about their life, they ask about your life, and then it builds another relationship. And it's actually usually very lucky in that relationship, as it doesn't matter as a mentor or a mentee, but you hope that in your career path, when it evolves, that relationship evolves as well into something that is always, how do we call it, sustainable, but it's not doing justice. It's something that you want to take with you at all times throughout your career. So I think that's the intention, and I think most of those relationships start like that. And one can be so lucky to have that kind of relationships more than once. I was lucky enough to have a couple of those back in the government, and after, when I joined my firm, I was always surrounded by wise people, but the relationship grows as time passes. And now I feel like after 4 years, 5 years, we are more like colleagues, not like mentors. But anytime you have any questions, they are there. That's what matters.
Yeah. So, and we will have a few minutes at the end for anyone to ask questions. So start working on your questions now. So what are some effective ways a mentee can kind of take initiative and add value to the mentorship relationship instead of it feeling a bit one-sided? And I'll direct it to whoever would like to.
I'll start. Couple of ways, I would think. Obviously, one that people often do is they offer to pitch in on a piece of work that you're doing, which is great because it's very much appreciated, and you get more of a relationship, and you know their skills because you see them. So that's really very helpful. Sometimes helping to organize an event or something like that. Getting feedback from the mentee is kind of nice every now and then. Geez, when you told me about this, I tried it and it worked well, but blah, blah, blah. That kind of is nice. It makes you feel like it's much more of a dynamic relationship. And then the third one, and I'll dare to age myself, but you guys are millennials or whatever gen is before, and often your mentor is going to be dinosaur gen like me, and skills like computer skills and AI skills and things like that. And just showing us those kind of little things, that's great. So I think those are the kind of things that actually can help. So it is a two-way relationship.
Eleanor, did you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I do think also the sounding board goes both ways. I think sometimes as the mentor in the situation, you're still dealing with a conundrum or a dilemma that you don't necessarily have a solution for. And, sometimes to give an example from my own life, in situations where I'm working with a junior associate who may or may not be understanding what they're supposed to be doing, talking with one of my mentees about how they would approach it can often help because they're a little bit closer in age. They're closer in experience, they understand where the other person is coming from, or maybe what they're not getting in the instructions that I'm giving. And I think that can actually be a really helpful way to sort of add value back to the mentor, is to, coach them in the lingo and how to, maybe to your point about the dinosaurs, how to effectively convey instructions or make sure that they're really giving assignments the way they're supposed to be doing them. And I also love the point you made about the feedback. I think that one of the best things, once you've gotten really good advice from someone, is to go back and tell them how it worked. Reminding your mentors that you're actually listening to what they're saying and that you're onboarding their suggestions. And this was a really effective strategy, or maybe it didn't go exactly how we expected it to. I think that's a really great thing. And it's sort of like the professional equivalent of the thank you note, right? This was really, really appreciated. And here's what happened with it.
Michael?
I'm listening because these are good. These are really good responses. I don't have a lot to add. I would say that, when we began talking about this, because we had a few preparation sessions, I remember I was saying that I really didn't think, mentor was really like so much of a two-way street as it was something where you were kind of like paying it forward a little bit. But that doesn't, and I think I have a little bit of that perspective. People help you and you have experience, and I think it's only the right and natural and good thing to be, in a position where if you're a little bit more senior and know something, you're sharing that with other people. And I think it contributes in a way that is kind of very basic to everybody, just enjoying what they're doing. As I thought about it more, though, I mean, I think there's absolutely the case that there are payoffs to that can come from the mentee, because when you're creating that kind of environment, particularly when you're in a business that's fundamentally about persuading people and understanding things in a way that bring about results, having the real engagement of people with that subject matter who are intensely aware of it and do not have your perspective is usually helpful. So I think that really helps, but I don't really feel like the mentee has a whole lot that they should be doing for the mentor, particularly in a more kind of formal relationship. I think it's something where you kind of have a right to expect that people will be interacting with one another in that mode, and it's just the way that it should be, I think.
I think for many years, because I was a mentee, I always had the obligation to always deliver something for my mentor, because I'm coming from a jurisdiction, a country that wasn't necessarily the best in providing a formal mentorship programs, right? So all we did was with our own efforts, we used to find someone that we are idolizing for many years, and watching from a distance, and hope that they will recognize us and hopefully be helpful if we have any questions. And we are so lucky. If we are so lucky, they can become a mentor to us. So what I used to think is that, I have to deliver something. Probably that person is expecting me to produce with him or with produce something, or just maybe help out, just make sense, organize something, or offer your support or your time, and that will be enough. But now that listening to Michael, and it makes sense that yes, a mentor, it doesn't necessarily have to be a two-way street. Actually offer it, your support and your mentorship, and hope for the best. Hope that there will be something, not in return per se, but more like that you expect some steps forward, so that hopefully that relationship will be a long-term one. It doesn't necessarily have to be a payment, but it definitely needs some nourishment. Definitely the mentee should have that perspective that we are growing, right? We will be attorneys. This goes especially for young lawyers. And in 5 years, in 10 years, you become experts in your field. You want to keep that relationship. Without nourishment, it's not sustainable anyway, if that's the purpose of having a mentor.
Right. So I know we mentioned being respectful of your mentor's time and understanding that by them being a mentor and probably in the position to give you advice, they're probably quite busy. So how important is it as a mentee to come to a meeting with your mentor prepared with specific questions, or should it be a bit more letting it kind of flow as a conversation? I'll direct this one to Michael.
I don't know. I think it really, I got to say it depends. I mean, I think it depends on what the relationship, what the nature of that mentor-mentee relationship is. The one thing that if you take a general view of mentorship that I think I have trouble with currently is that sometimes you'll establish some sort of a relationship with people who are younger and want to kind of expand their network and might know them, and they might reach out to you. You might see them at a conference. You might have some connection. And those people, precisely because they want to get ahead and want to move forward, will sometimes look for, say, some recommendation or professional support or something like that. There are circumstances where there's a limit to what you can really effectively do for someone who you haven't really worked closely with. So I guess what I would say in response to this is I think it really depends whether you have a kind of relationship where you just kind of go into somebody's office when there's a little bit of time and then you read whether they have time to chat or not. But if you're not in that zone, it's difficult for everybody to know how much or how little to ask. And I think maybe this is something that is tough, but that the mentee has to kind of be a little bit cognizant of. If you're having a relationship that's positive, but is what it is, it's not so much a question of being prepared with the time, but what is appropriate to ask for, expect by way of support. Because I will say that is sometimes have been difficult. I've sometimes been asked by people who I know to a degree and like, and have had some interaction with sometimes over a period of time and looking for this job or this thing, but I may not really be in a position to provide any kind of like assessment or support. And then you don't really want to say that to the person who's asking, because obviously they felt they could ask. But sometimes you really can't evaluate somebody's work or professionalism or have the kind of experiences that would allow somebody to really make a positive assessment. So that would be my response to that question, in terms of trying to understand what the relationship is at the time and adjusting yourself to that.
Meg, did you have any thoughts to add?
No, I mean, I have the same views as Michael. Yeah.
Seems like it depends quite a bit on just the mentee having a bit of that emotional intelligence to kind of suss out the situation and what's appropriate. Cansu, did you have anything to add?
Yes, emotional intelligence and reading the room, the expectations, and what your relationship with the mentor is based on. What is the end game? What's the end game for the mentee? I think that would be the solution.
Yeah.
I'll add just one thing, which is that sometimes I think it's important to help the mentor be prepared. So if you're going in with a very big question, or it's a very specific sort of strategy question, giving them the context is really important, because I think sometimes giving advice in a vacuum is incredibly difficult.
Very good point. So I'm wondering, over the course of your careers, what sort of strategies or methods work to kind of keep your mentors or your mentees kind of updated on what you're doing and keep that relationship alive across busy schedules and changing circumstances. And I'll start with Cansu.
Well, currently, I will be honest, doesn't matter how busy I am. If I receive a phone call from a person, a younger colleague, I cannot say a mentee, but younger colleagues that I'm working with, that's my priority. to be honest. So for this busy schedules, it's crazy. I honestly, I work domestically and internationally. So my schedule during the day is from 9 to 4 p.m. I work in Turkey. I'm a lawyer in Istanbul. But after 4 p.m., I'm an international lawyer, and God knows at what hour I can really finish up. And that is the case for most of international lawyers, and especially in arbitration, where many jurisdictions are involved. There is a diversity of timelines, and it's so crazy. But making time, I definitely keep myself updated about the persons who are involved in my career path. I follow up. I congratulate them. And anything that they publish, any developments in their personal life that I know of, I always stay connected. And also, I do the same with our young colleagues. I also watch them from a distance, and it doesn't matter how busy I am. In that schedule, there are professional links, but also personal links that I am very keen on sustaining them in my life. So like, this is my solution, but I know sometimes you look back and you haven't talked to that person for 3 years. It happens. But for younger colleagues, I definitely make the time. It doesn't matter when they are calling me, I'm always there.
I was going to say, I think the key to that is you can be spontaneous and it doesn't have to be a big thing. I know, for example, I love to read newspaper clippings, and if I find something that relates to something a mentee told me about something several years ago, I might just say, "Oh, I saw this. Did you see it? Isn't this interesting?" Or a particular case. What do you think of this case coming out? Just anything. It doesn't have to be long. It's just that you're making contact. The other thing that's kind of nice every now and then is just to send a little note. I worked for a deputy minister once, and he would come in on Monday morning, literally with a stack of little notes to people, congratulations on your new baby, glad to hear you got that new job, whatever it was. But literally, he would have a stack of those, and they would only be 1 or 2 lines. They don't have to be long, but just getting a note like that is a really nice thing when you're on the receiving end. So little things like that, the idea is just stay in contact.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think one strategy I employ often is what I call introvert networking, which is basically keeping in contact with people through just like notes about what's happening in the world. And one thing I love to do is, I think especially within the Washington, D.C. community, we have a lot of international contact. We have a lot of people that come in from abroad that then go back. And anytime I'm traveling, I like to figure out who I know in the place I'm going to and ask them for their favorite cafe. What's the restaurant that you would go to? What is the walk that you like to do? If I have 2 hours between events, is there a museum I should go to? Just as a sort of way to like remind people I'm here, I'm around, I want your advice. And then I do the same when people come through DC.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Did you have anything to add, Michael?
I mean, I think the ideas of notes are great. The little reach outs are great. I mean, I'm horrible at that sort of thing. I mean, I really make an effort. I'm bad at it. I think I'm bad at relationships. Other people might confirm that. But I think I'm worse at them because I'm a lawyer. I do, because, there are kind of the way we work and what have you. That's not really an excuse. I might use it as an excuse. So I think making effort at that stuff is terrific. I mean, that idea of those notes is great. For me, I really like your idea about when you're traveling, seeing people. For somebody who's not good at relationships, it's been like a blessing that you have to go to some place and you haven't really kept up with somebody, but since you're going there, it's kind of a good reason to reach out to them, and then that energy. So there are also things about our distinctive way of working that I think help, even if it's a challenging area, because you have those events, where you go someplace and you see and it kind of almost excuses a lack of having maintained stuff. But this, I think, laps very heavily into like, are you good at people? Are you not good at people? And then there's going to be a big range as to how people maintain those mentorship relationships.
So in a mentorship relationship that it sort of spans many years and many phases of careers, is there anything particular about that mentorship relationship that made it so amenable to being that long of a relationship? Cansu, I'll head to you.
I think now looking back, I see that the most long-term relationship I have with a mentor is the one who is actually fun spending time with. Not only interacting for work purposes, but if you can build a good communication basis with that person, and you have common interests in other areas, then it's a long-term mentorship. It's a long-term relationship. It's not obliging upon any of the parties. So this is the only way that I can see a relationship that can be sustainable for the future. Because I think that when people see this as an obligation or like a project, every project has a term, right? They end when the purpose is met, it's fulfilled, then it's finished. But when you develop something deeper than that, sometimes with one of my mentors was in the government, and she was not the easiest person to work with, but I respected her so much as a female leader, and it turned out that she had a style. All I needed to just figure it out. That's so basic now. Looking back, I can understand it, but it wasn't easy to comprehend at the time. But I have developed that kind of relationship with her, and now I think throughout many life events, I still turn to her asking for advice, because I know that that person knew how I was when I was a young associate. My character right now, my character currently is something that's full grown. I'm an adult, but she knows the history of me, right? So if you can build a relationship that goes deeper than the to-do lists and the recommendations, and if you just allow that to have a deeper bond, I think that is for life. And you will always, always get something from that relationship. I don't know if that answers, but
Yeah, it does. Any other panelists?
I don't think there's much that we could add to that.
Yeah.
Honestly. I think it's true. The best mentorship relationships that have the longevity are the ones that are friendships, that have reached a point of not just being about the professional development, but also personal development. And I think that one thing that's really fun for a lot of people is going to conferences, going to all these arbitration events, and having people there that you know and that you know well, that you can sort of duck out of the conference and grab a lunch or grab a coffee or do something just fun with. I think that preserves a relationship very well.
Don't you have like one person or maybe two in your life that you still call and say, they offered me this job. Do you think I should take it? And that person says something that you should have been saying and questioning for yourself. And they say, oh, 20 years ago, you said no to that thing. I remember that. This is how you react in such circumstances. Do you really want this to happen? That kind of, this is not formal mentorship, but if you keep those people in your lives, they're always there. And sometimes they know you better than you know yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I have one person from my days at the government. When I talk about these topics, I automatically, remember her, and I say, oh, maybe I should just give her a call after this panel. I talked about you.
Yes, this is the official reminder to send notes to all of your mentors and everyone that you've been connected with over the years. So something that's different in the international arbitration context is that very international nature of the job and how it spans different careers, how it spans different time zones and countries. So how can cultural differences influence mentorship relationships and communications in the field? Meg, I'll turn to you first.
I struggle with this question, to be honest. I think it's the way you have to be aware of cultural differences in any relationship. So it's just being aware of them and respecting them, frankly. That's what I would think.
Yeah. Cansu, do you have anything to add?
Yes, so my arbitration career is based on independent practices. So I have an independent practice. So I team up with independent expert groups, or I don't have a big law firm affiliation when it comes to my arbitration practice. So that actually involves us to be always very sort of sometimes I cannot find the right word, but it's very careful about the diversity in each team. So it's easier when you are working at a law firm that already safeguards cultural diversity, isn't it? It's easier in that kind of a setup. But if you have an independent practice, you have to form up or set up a team for each specific case. And you care about that diversity and you need it. And most of the time in international arbitration, there are a clash of jurisdictions, different people. And you have to pick different arbitrators coming from similar or completely different jurisdictions for the purposes of arbitration itself. So I think that when it comes to international arbitration, I think that the cultural diversity is at its peak among other international law areas. So what I think about arbitration is a person who is not respecting that or doesn't understand what advantages or what value it brings to the team and to the case shouldn't work in arbitration, international arbitration at all. I would be that certain about that. And for cultural diversity, I think that in international arbitration, it means a lot, and that there is an equal chance given to different diversity groups. And if you are new to international arbitration, there's always a chance that you find mentorship within those teams that you set up. And it's also really important. I have taken a note for this one, but international arbitration is maybe 90% master-apprentice relationship. You learn by experience. It's still an ever evolving area of law. So I think that diversity also brings the opportunity to create that master-apprentice relationships that can be, also a sort of a mentorship relationship as well.
Yeah, I think a bit to Cansu's point, one of the advantages to arbitration is that the cultural diversity is expected. And so I think when it comes to, one of the ways that manifests is often communication styles. And when it comes to how to stay in touch with a mentor or mentee, it's totally fine to follow someone's lead or just to ask, what do you prefer? Should I WhatsApp you? Should I text you? Should I email? Should I call? Should I send formal letters? Do you have a preference on how we stay in communication? And I think that people sort of value and appreciate those questions when they get them, because everyone's a little bit different in terms of what they're good at. And I will confess, I am terrible at LinkedIn messaging. I often do not notice them. So one thing I tend to encourage people is send me an email so it comes to my phone and I have it handy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. You've got to find the method that works for each person. And so I didn't ask you guys this in our sort of prep conversations, but I'm wondering, I know that a lot of you probably get emails, kind of cold emails, people asking you to talk to them and give them advice or get your thoughts on their career or something like that. Do you have any do's or don'ts for when people reach out to you in that kind of environment where perhaps you haven't met them before or you've briefly interacted with them, and what you recommend they do or don't do in that situation?
I always say yes, because I always think, if it was me on the other end, what would I want? Or if it was my kid on the other end, so I always say yes. I don't know if that's the best policy. Sometimes I'll have 4 or 5 calls in a day, and I think I'm probably repeating the same advice, but I think it matters. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, coming from Meg, that's a really nice answer, because I can only imagine how deluged with
Yeah.
contacts and communications and reach outs, you know, you must be. And I'd like to say that. I think as a practical matter, although I might say I always make myself available, at least in some fashion, or respond, I very seldom, like, you know, unless it's some crazy solicitation or something, I very seldom don't respond to an email. I just think that that's kind of rough. I may not let it go too much further. I will say that sometimes I get reach outs from people who I have no connection with at all, that are so obviously cut and paste mechanical. And I don't have a policy or a do or don't. But if I'm being honest with myself, there are emails like that that I do not respond to, when it's just so generic and so, you know, and time is, you know, is what it is sometimes. So I don't have do's and don'ts, but it's great if there's something that makes it a little bit more organic or real. If it's just, I need to build a network, so I'm kind of blasting the world, you know, there's just ever more of that.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah. I would only say one thing, and please provide feedback to your mentors about the things that you have been committed. You know, you said, I'm going to do this, I will apply there, and I want to do this. If you have done it, or if you have done something completely different, let that person know. I think what mentorship is also, from the mentor side, we don't know what's going on with young people doing. They're applying for jobs, but at the same time to masters or, you know, doctorate programs. They are involved in many things, but feedback would be so nice. And I used to think that, you know, oh, maybe he wouldn't like to know, you know, this is so trivial for him. I used to think it like, no, it's not. It's never trivial.
yeah, I'll just add that I am old enough at this point to, when I started, we were still on business cards and everyone exchanged physical copies of business cards. And one of the best bits of advice I got was to flip them over and write down where you met the person, how, and something memorable about the conversation. So that as you were sort of building out your network, you had a sense of who this person was and how you interacted with them. I think it's harder when you don't have a pocket that has that information, but keeping some track and some record of that. And then when you see people again, reminding them, this is how we met, this is where we met, this is what we talked about. I think it's a very easy way to build the network without it being awkward or forced or the sort of rote copy paste thing to every single person that you meet.
Just taking notes. So we do have about maybe 10 minutes left for questions from the audience, if anyone has any. I also have backup questions if we don't, but yes, go ahead.
Very nice of you.
With the mentor, you are very you always try, and after we look at you they're very nervous when they come in front of your face and ask something, right? But if possible, just there's some time to feedback or even, you know, answer the email, because that might change the outcome. So my example, when I was in Vietnam, my hometown, and when professor from the US come to Vietnam 20 years ago. And he just lectured about the international trade and about what is the PTA of the Vietnam. And then I sent him the message. And then from that, during, like 20 years, he always give me the feedback. And not only that, he recommended me to a lot of his friends in DC, and one of them is Miss Man. And then back then, I know her 10 years ago, he always in a very high position. But, from that, I learned something, and I even know about what, you figure out what is yourself is even better than you. So it's like, I listen, I reading the publication, and also I follow their book bring, and then I learned that, wow, I have to go to the US to study law. And then, from the two big mentors, and then I make decision. You have to apply for the Fulbright scholar. And then, and then I still follow her. So that's why I mean, like, sometimes the mentee is very, nervous, and they must have some, background or even like languages. But I mean, like, if you have spent time and you interest for the mentee, so that's why, you can feel and you can help the community, because not everyone is like easy, right? If you have a like investment case, you go to the other developing country, that is terrible. But if you can share with them or with the student or with the practitioner out there, so you might change something and you build something from there. So thank you.
That's so wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing that story. And I promise that wasn't an audience plant. Any other questions for us? Yes, please.
We are built in the workplace. So, and that seems to me easier, but assuming that's not the case, that you're not working with the people that you want to create those relationships. When you make, because my experience has been that most of the time if people can, they want to help, they'll meet with you. And once you make that relationship, what are your thoughts on balancing staying in the mind of the firm and the attorney with not coming off as, for lack of a better word, insistent or annoying, because it seems to me that it's a very thin line. And it's like in arbitration, and also from what I told people, you don't want to be in their mind. Really happy happens, like if something comes up, it's who they have in mind, but also who most recently reached out. So it's been, I know it's judgment call and emotional intelligence, but like I wonder if there's like here and there any specific recommendations that you might have, like, yeah, definitely maybe wait it out, don't do them again. So
I guess I would say that one thing that's great, and you alluded to it yourself, is if you can find ways to actually work with the person. Whether if it's easier, obviously, if you're in some formal setting, a law firm or some business or whatever it may be, and you're practicing new problems. I mean, the opportunities to work are made, and then you build what you're building out of that. But we're talking about mentorship, and in a certain sense, that's kind of interacting with someone in a career sense and developing yourself as a professional. So it's pretty difficult for there to really be oxygen for that unless there is a work kind of connection. But there can be outside of work. Everybody's constantly writing, thinking about things, have projects where, help can often be very much appreciated. So I do think that there is something that really the mentor can offer in that sense to create the oxygen out of which the relationship goes. But I'll also just quickly add too that, there's theory and then there's like reality, right? The reality, you say, well, you need to be in people's minds, because if a job comes up and they're not thinking of you, and, I think everybody's in that boat to some degree, and you think about, whoever you might want to be your mentor, they're probably in some sense hustling for a living too, just, you don't see them, right? So they're trying to be on people's minds and trying to, relationships, and they've been in. So I don't think that anybody really holds it against you or should, and if they do, don't worry about it. Like if you're just kind of reaching out to, in a sense, nicely stay on somebody's radar screen, life can't always be perfect. You can't always have a project, and you are trying to get ahead, and you are the kind of person who should be getting ahead and, and doing the right things. And I don't think anybody's offended by, hey, I just wanted to tell you what I've done. I think Meg mentioned on one of our calls, I'm just kind of stealing it, but it really is helpful sometimes. Like, oh, I just read something that was of interest. I know you have an interest in, because there's so much stuff out there in the world that it actually is pretty hard to read stuff that interests you and all the topics that interest you. So that's a very effective, easy thing. If you find something that you actually think is valuable and some topic of interest, and you share it and you're right, you know, that's a real connection, you know, that you can make very easily.
I think that's right. The number one side is the sort of volunteer, help on a conference, help with an article, any of those kind of things. The second side is the more sort of outward facing, be visible. That's one of the things, excuse me, I always tell people, be visible. So maybe be visible because you're here today and all of these people have you top of mind now. That's the kind of thing to remember. And sometimes it'd be nice to stay home and just work on what you're doing, but you got to be visible. And I think that's not targeted to that one person, but just generally, you are a part of the community and you are thinking about these things and talking about these things. So I think that helps too.
I think one of the best bits of advice that my first boss gave me was Young Ojimid, which he signed me up for and has encouraged me to stay part of and is very active in posting on. I think a lot of these fora exist for young people to talk about arbitration and to speak about issues and to weigh in on certain points and questions. And I think that's a way to stay visible that does allow you to sit behind your computer on occasion if you feel like staying home, but a way to sort of be part of the conversation. And I'll add also, I don't think it's wrong to just ask for what you want. I think sometimes people will enter into a mentoring relationship with someone, a professor who's also a law partner or someone in a position of power, and will sort of be very subtle about, you know, sort of walking around what it is they're actually looking for. If you want a job, if you're looking for a position, it's okay to make that very clear to someone. And I think people often appreciate that because if they have your resume on hand and they know that you are actively looking, when a job comes up, it's much easier to pull you out of the pile and say, this is the person we're going to hire for this role.
And I think just to add to that, lots of times you might not be hired for that role, but a year and a half later, something else comes along and they say, oh, you might be interested in this. It's funny the way things happen. So, yeah.
Cansu, did you have anything to add?
And I was thinking the same thing. Sometimes, yes, you aim for something, but then something else happens entirely different.
Any other questions from our audience, or I don't know if we have questions from the virtual audience? No? Okay. Well, something we kind of spoke about briefly is there anything you wish you had known earlier in your career? We'll get some free advice for the folks in the audience today. Michael, I know you had an interesting perspective on this.
Oh, okay. I remember that. And I do have it. I think when we were talking in the panel, what I said was to have a sense of time that's appropriate to kind of being in law practice. Because I certainly remember for myself, I was very, very eager to get the experience that I thought I needed. And sometimes that was specific things. I wanted to do this task or that task. It's very difficult to make opportunities happen in a law, and certainly in a law firm setting, because it depends a lot on your clients, who comes through the door, what they need, where the cases are. So I would say patience is really something that by and large, younger people making a career in the law should, because it doesn't matter what your relationship is, doesn't matter how much somebody wants to help you. You know, if the opportunity to do that thing that you want to be doing isn't presenting itself, there may not be all that much that can be done to create that opportunity now. And that can be very difficult for younger people, or feeling frustrated, you know, that they're not getting the support that they think they need from the person who should wait around a little while. And there may be all of that experience and more in excess, but it might be not 2 or 3 months later, but a year later or 18 months, you know, the cases are long and take time. So that just attitude towards time is something that took me a long time to really figure out. And I'd say to keep that in mind. A lot of opportunities will present themselves, and it's sometimes hard to force the timing of those opportunities.
I would change one thing. I think maybe 15 years ago, I would definitely not be obsessed about certain law firms. If I want an arbitration career, I should have been I should have started at this law firm. If that doesn't happen, that law firm. Those kind of obsessions towards the institutions is something that I'd rather change in every young lawyer that I know. So there are wonderful mid-sized law firms, wonderful independent institutions, entities, or practices, independent practices that have wonderful arbitration practice. And I would definitely encourage everyone to focus on the substance rather than who's delivering it for a while, and follow your specific area of interest. That will definitely lead you somewhere that will open up the perfect door for you. So the substance and not having any obsession about where you are going to work. It could be somewhere entirely different. It could be somewhere in Asia, somewhere in the Middle East. You can start in a branch of a big law firm in a different country. And that sometimes accelerates the advancement of your career. So I would let go of any obsessions, any predetermined paths for me, and could have chosen a different way, but I'm pretty sure that I would have ended up at an independent practice, just like now, even if I made another choice back in the history.
Anything to add, Meg or Eleanor?
No, I guess the one thing I would add is it is a two-way street, and not only have a mentor, but be a mentor, because everybody's at different levels and needing different information. So make sure that you're being a mentor to somebody. What goes around comes around. So it's a benefit to everybody.
I think the only thing I can add on that, I think these are all really good things. And honestly, I struggle with the patience one, so I appreciate that. I think that I would add on, be the owner of your own role, right? Take ownership of what you're working on. Learn the whole case, not just the component of it that is yours. And ask questions, be curious with the people above you who are directing you, who are giving you opportunities. Tell them what you're looking for, and just, keep your head down and keep going. It's hard.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thanks so much.